Welcome, everybody, to the Value Add Strategy Podcast. I'm joined today by Keith Meyer Jr., who is a broker. We're really excited to have him. He's with Skyview Advisors, and he's in an asset class that's I'm very passionate about as well, which is the manufactured housing asset class. So, Keith, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here, Matt. Appreciate it.
All right. Looks like you're in sunny San Diego from the background. Hope you're having a great day out there.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful winter here. Man, I don't think we've dropped below like 65 degrees the entire time. So I've been loving it. Been getting outdoors a bunch.
Nice. Love that city. Well, great. So with that, kind of have an interesting background in that your family, and correct me if I'm wrong here, my understanding is your family kind of started in the manufactured housing community asset class maybe 40, 50 years ago, if I'm understanding that correctly. Is that right?
Yeah. We kind of stumbled upon it, but much earlier than most. Literally, my grandfather and father found an ad in the newspaper for a mobile home park, and they were looking at, commercial investments, wanted to get into landlording in some form or fashion. My grandfather was a residential subdivision developer. Father had nothing to do with real estate at the time. So they ended up finding a gem of an asset in Cincinnati, Ohio, where we're all from. Bought that in the mid 90s, and we owned that for a couple decades and ended up
Wow.
doing a 1031 exchange on that a couple years ago into a community in Southwest. So yeah, we've been active mobile home park owners and operators ever since, a couple decades now.
Nice. So you grew up in Cincinnati in that
I
case?
did. Yep.
All right. When did you move out to California?
Moved out here. Gosh, I got to update my numbers, but I think it was about 15 years ago. So yeah, it's been great. Time flies when you're in sunny San Diego. I got a lot to be happy about here.
Yeah. Well, similar background for me. I'm from back east myself. I'm from New York, and I moved out when I was relatively young in my early 20s to Long Beach, California,
Oh yeah.
where I spent a number of years. But I can understand why you would Cincinnati for San Diego. Nothing against Cincinnati, but San Diego is very pretty.
Sure. Yeah, can't beat it. Favorite city in the country.
So your grandfather was looking through the newspaper and kind of stumbled on this asset class. And your father really never got in the business, if I heard you correctly.
So, I mean, he's kind of performing the role that I perform to an extent as main asset manager. It's really where I learned how to cut my teeth as I got more hands on. And I started from a career outside of commercial real estate as well, engineer by background. So I spent a good 10, 15 years in more of the corporate world in a number of different industries focused on operations engineering, but really caught the bug probably 10, 12 years ago in terms of wanting to transition primarily into commercial real estate, mostly on the owner operator side to start. And then more recently, a transaction side through Skyview as an investment sales specialist. So yeah, we've kind of seen the cycles as far as, what's happened 30 years ago today, as far as just the heat and the energy and the sexiness behind our seemingly unsexy asset class here. And I can tell you, it was a night and day difference back in the day, especially in the Midwest versus what we see in the enthusiasm that we see around this asset class today.
Yeah, no, I got started about 20 years ago. And I remember when I first got started, similar kind of feeling here. You'd be at a cocktail party or you'd be chatting with people and you kind of tell them what you do and you kind of cringe as you tell them because you just kind of get this squint and odd response of confusion. Like, why would you do that? But you see something in it. I saw something in it and now we were right. And now everybody knows when you talk about what you do, wow, I've heard those are cash cows. Those are great assets. And it's really interesting how the tables have turned. When I got started, you think about retail or office, and those were like the trophy assets. Those were the coveted investments that, institutional capital wanted to have exposure. And now it's like it's flip-flopped, where you look at office and look at retail and look at now manufactured housing. It's quite incredible how things have changed. And to be on the front end of that curve is quite rewarding. We were right, but I always regret, boy, why didn't I buy more? And I don't know if you and your family have a similar feeling.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, they became difficult to manage from a couple thousand miles away. With the proliferation of modern technology, mobile technology, it's you talk with a lot of people that can manage portfolios from a distance. So I think that's really helped expand to national reach.
Yeah. So, given that your family was in this business, mine wasn't. Mine was in the restaurant business. Could you share some lessons, something your grandfather would always tell you that stuck in your mind about this asset class? I've spent a lot of time with mom and pop legacy owners, and I've learned more from them than almost anybody, just being in the field and listening, because they're really hands on and they're passionate, owner operators that are very much hands on. But is there anything that you could remember that your father or your grandfather said that kind of really resonated with you that you still apply to this day to being a successful owner operator?
That's a great question. There's a couple good examples that come to mind. I'd say first and foremost, this really is a customer service business. We're in the business of serving our customers, and that's how this can be a win-win type opportunity and investment. So I can think of examples when my father was taking phone calls Christmas Eve for frozen water pipes, dead of winter in Ohio, and had to coordinate our maintenance guy to go out there and talk him through triaging over the phone. And, we really did work hard to build our roster of maintenance and even third-party contractor help so that if our first option fell through, we had somebody who could respond to everything and anything that might pop up pretty quickly. Yeah. That's a lesson that's really stuck with me today. I'm pretty insistent upon having redundancies in place on the communities that I asset manage and operate, because I've been pushed on that quite a bit, and it's behooved our operational team to have those backup options in place in case something falls through.
Yeah. So be available for the customer, put simply.
Yep, absolutely.
And I see that, as an owner operator myself, we've got about 7,500 sites we own and operate, and we pride ourselves on being vertically integrated, where we don't outsource any of the third party management in these communities. But when you have that bond and you have that relationship with your residents, especially when you have a home sales program like we do, really helps tremendously in terms of selling homes. Because think about who your best marketing and advertising sources to sell homes is happy existing residents. They're going to tell the whole world about how great it is to live in this community. So that's helped us tremendously, and kind of ties right into the advice that you learned from your father and grandfather, putting the customer first.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've spent more money and more time on trying to build elaborate modern marketing programs than I care to admit. And what you just said is 100% true. The referral you're going to have, the best tenant is a direct referral from a happy resident who's already residing in your community.
Isn't that interesting? Like this day and age, you got every day you have something new going on with AI, and this stuff is really remarkable what's possible. I mean, we're kind of implementing it across our organization. I'm sure you are on the brokerage side as well. But, as a business owner myself, sometimes I get concerned that people are focusing too much on the tech stack and they're losing focus on what matters. And that's that interpersonal relationship and connection, whether it's be with you and a park owner or myself and one of our residents. There's nothing, in my opinion, tell me what you think about this, that's more powerful than that raw human connection and bond. And from there, there's so many great things that could happen. And I don't think tech, as advanced as it is and as fast as it's progressing and as quickly as it's changing all of our lives, I don't ever seeing it take the place of interpersonal connection and emotion and wanting to do business with people you like, know, and trust. And I'm just curious of your thoughts on that.
Right. I mean, the biggest tech stack that I use on a number of fronts is CRM, customer relationship management. And, that technology is there to foster exactly what you just said, having good relationships with your customers and staying on the forefront. And I really appreciate that technology because it allows those touch points to be more clear, more frequent. Again, I think that goes to deliver a win-win situation in terms of customer service.
Speaking of your relationships with your customers, who are in the most part buyers and sellers of mobile home communities, is there anything in your mind that you could share with us? What's the main distinction, would you say, between a poor owner operator, a mediocre owner operator, and an exceptional owner operator in terms of creating value at the property level?
Really, really good question. There's a number of kind of more detailed tactical aspects of that we can go into, but it comes down to just staying in touch with your tenant base, staying in touch with your staff, your employees, staying in touch with your vendors, staying in touch with what's going on in local legislation, even national legislation to a certain extent, what's going on in the debt markets and financing markets. The properties that I see slip into distress, even in high demand, really primary markets, are typically because somebody kind of fell asleep at the wheel, and maybe there was a transition plan from elder to a younger family member that didn't go well because that younger member wasn't trained up to take over the reins. So that's really what I think everything boils down to.
Okay. No, I think that's great. In terms of the market itself, It's just been gangbusters, as we both kind of
It sure
discussed
has. Yep.
over the past, let's call it 5 years, even more than that. But certainly, after COVID, it's been incredible. Where do you see it going? You've been in this business, your family's been in this business for, since the early 90s, it sounds like. You're on the front line of seeing transactions and what buyers are willing to pay and kind of the seller profile that's out there and the return expectations. But where do you see us as an industry kind of evolving into, let's say, within the next 5 or 10 years, and from a returns perspective, and then perhaps from a demand perspective for the actual product, the actual homes within these communities?
Wow, I could go a lot of different directions with that answer. And I'm sure there's a lot of directors of acquisition that wish I was going to say that cap rates are going to shoot up and pricing is going to go down. But I just don't see that happening with the supply demand dynamic that's in place for this particular asset class. So the way I kind of simplify explaining this is I think our business comes down to three components, really. It's the revenue side, it's the expense side, and it's the capital stack side. And if I start maybe with expense side, which is a little bit more straightforward, we have a lot of discussions these days when we're underwriting properties and working with sellers on isolating controllable expenses versus non-controllable expenses. And that level of clarity has become necessary in recent times because of all the issues you're hearing about with property taxes and insurance prices going up. Those are kind of the two main non-controllable expenses that we categorize. And, that's a really challenging situation to navigate. I mean, it is not uncommon at all for a year over year increase in insurance policy or property tax assessment to go up 15, 20%. On the apartment side, I've seen it much, much higher than that, 30 to 70%. So mobile home parks still are better than most. But when you accompany that with how challenging it is to keep repair and maintenance costs under control, whether it's labor component or materials, what's going on with supply chains and tariffs these days. That's a lot of dominoes falling at once that are tough to stay ahead of and tough to project that expense equation is going to look like. So that's really made underwriting the expense side of the equation more challenging than it has in the past. On the revenue side, fortunately, that's in the Skyview report that we just released last week. It kind of points to this. That's been pretty steady Eddie for a very long time in most markets. I mean, you're seeing consistent positive rent growth on the magnitude of 2 to 7% in most markets. That is absolutely not the case in the apartment world right now, where you're seeing negative rent growth in a lot of oversupplied markets. So that is keeping properties out of distress. And that, of course, goes to why you're not seeing a lot of distressed pricing come to market. But what's the biggest pressure point on revenue really is the topic of rent control to an extent, secondarily, right of first refusal. I can't believe the percentage of conversations I have that end up bringing up those topics with sellers or would-be sellers. That's really increased over the last 6 to 12 months, I'd say, noticeably compared to where it was before. And you're seeing every couple months, you're seeing a new state pop up that had never considered the rent control measure. And a lot of these are just copy pasted from some of the coastal markets that have been doing this, going down that path for quite a while. And, that really can be a wake up call, and it can be what I can consider a damaging force on affordable housing supply when that starts to get introduced, which is a complex topic, but happy to jump into that.
Yeah. In light of that, so I think what you're saying in summary is that, the supply dynamics in this asset class are not going to change. In fact, there may be even less supply, if I'm hearing you correctly. And obviously, if the demand is even flat, then pricing should be pushed upwards as a result of that. Is that
correct? Yeah. It's not going to be new development. You're not going to see new apartment buildings pop up or adaptive reuse of old retail centers and office. Municipalities just don't want new traditional mobile home parks to pop up in their neighborhoods. So really the new supply in our industry, if there is one, is infill. And that's a big focal topic. And that's where the most successful value add operators that are able to deliver the highest returns are really placing their focus and energies, because that again is a win-win situation and a lot of opportunity. It's a heavy lift and a lot of risk associated with it, but that is about as close to development as the majority majority of our industry gets in today's world.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of parks, and I often get this question from folks that are kind of looking at this asset class for the first time. Within communities, even though there's tons of demand, the occupancy is 60, 70, 80. It's not 100%. Some parks it is. And it's interesting, you being around in their 90s, and I'm sure your family could attest to this, similar to the subprime crisis that we experienced, let's say back in 2007, 2008, there was a similar crisis in the early 2000s that not many people know about in the manufactured housing space, specifically as it applies to chattel. Not so much the dirt, but the homes within these communities. It was a dynamic where some of these lenders, Vanderbilt, 21st Mortgage, some of these other ones that were still out there during that time, Triad, they really wanted to get capital out the door. And they would, the famous way of putting it is they would kind of, lend to anybody who could fog up a mirror. And as a result of that, there was folks that, couldn't make the mortgage payment. And what happened was the lenders and repos kind of came in, took all these homes out of these communities. So a community that would be 100% occupied is all of a sudden 50. And very challenging place to be in for this asset class during that time. Would have been a great time to be a buyer. And that's kind of when Sam Zell, who I'm sure you know very well,
Oh yeah,
rest in peace, but he pounced at an absolute perfect time, like during that perfect storm when that was occurring, and built, Equity Lifestyle Properties, which was mentioned in your white paper or your report that you just put together. Obviously built the largest portfolio that exists in America in this asset class. So very astute real estate investor and kind of the godfather of our industry.
yeah, absolutely. We can learn a lot of things from Sam Zell and Warren Buffett as far as vertical integration, continuous improvement goes. I mean, they saw the majority of the gaps that existed in the industry decades ago, and they were able to step in and provide creative solutions to bridge that gap. And fortunately, they've been generous enough to share those solutions with the majority of park owners at this point. So when you get into things like the 21st Mortgage cash program to help bring in new homes for infill, those are very innovative solutions that certainly weren't around back in the day when we were getting our start.
Yeah. So on your report that you wrote, I think it was last week or the week before, on behalf of Skyview. Great report, by the way, for anyone that wants to read it. We'll have it in the chat available. You had to boil it and distill it down to, let's say, 2 to 3 bullet points of what the core takeaways were from your report to share with the audience here. What would you say they are?
Yeah, you'll see kind of the headline of 98% occupancy in communities. Little caveat to that, that's of reported communities that track occupancy and have a mechanism to report that. So that's going to be your larger, 4 and 5 star communities predominantly. Close to that number as far back as I can remember. So again, goes to the kind of static nature of the supply side of the equation. But to kind of circle back to the infill opportunity that I was mentioning, there are a lot of medium-sized, smaller-sized communities that are in good markets that have demand for affordable housing that present a large opportunity for infill. And it's been interesting to kind of track the pricing thought on those type of communities over the last 5 to 10 years. Whereas I'd say 10 years ago, many operators were willing to pay a high premium at certain points for the opportunity to infill those pads, even though they weren't currently revenue generating. I think the trickiness of today's market, when you stack up what's going on in the financing world, not only on the property itself, but on the homes that you're trying to get sold at retail chattel loan rates to end buyers, gets tough to bring an affordable product into place and to do that at scale. Again, I think the opportunity is there, but you have to become a lot more creative and a lot more confident in your business plan to step into a property that's 75% occupied and make it one of those 98% occupied properties. So hopefully folks that are reading the report kind of catch on to that opportunity, and hopefully that line stands out. Another aspect that's touched on in the report is what the exit strategy looks like for sellers of certain profiles and communities. And obviously the larger players are launching funds, bringing on private equity and retail equity to an extent to continue to grow their portfolios. And we haven't had a huge track record of that beyond the REITs and certain select groups. But the thought is that they would either kind of run an evergreen fund in this asset class. Certainly the hold periods are longer than most, justifiably, or sell to a larger type group. That's kind of what we're seeing on the ground with the, I hesitate to call them mom and pops anymore. I kind of call them part-time professional owners, myself included, I would say, but that's kind of what we're seeing on the ground there. So I think that presents good opportunity as far as really providing a service and helping those owners who are getting a little less motivated to continue with the next decade, their sixth decade in some cases of active community ownership, and are looking to transition into something more passive. There are a lot more options these days in terms of transitioning their equity into a diversified fund, mobile home park focused or what have you, or even do something a little more complex like a 721 UPREIT, to where the takeaway is that they're getting a tax advantaged investment from the proceeds of their sale, but they're saying in a similar asset class that they know and trust. They're diversified across, in many cases, dozens of communities across dozens of markets. So I think that's a really good outcome, and we've seen a lot of positive success stories. So I would say I'm encouraged overall by seeing that continue to play out.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially on the sell side. You mentioned 721. We've seen a lot of it. That's a product that we offer here at Crystal View. And a lot of savvy owners have taken advantage of that, because what it does for them, and I'm sure you know this well, it allows for them to basically sell in a tax deferred event, similar to a 1031 exchange. The difference here is they don't have to go out and find a replacement property. They don't have to continue to manage, because a lot of these folks, the reason why they're selling is it's kind of estate planning for a lot of the sellers that we work with. They could do a 1031 exchange, but they're kind of back to where they started, where they have to be very active in terms of management. And a lot of them are now looking to phase out of their management duties and responsibilities. So the 721 allows them take advantage of the tax advantages of deferring the gain. And it also allows them to be passive in terms of operations. And then it also allows them further to become more diversified, where all of their eggs aren't in one basket. And if one event happens, their net worth could effectively be wiped out if it's all comprised and sits in one asset. Here at Crystal View, as an example, in our fourth fund, we've got 20 plus assets. And whether it's with us or anybody for that matter, I think it's a really interesting structure, and one worth looking into for legacy owners that want to take advantage of deferring the tax, that want to alleviate themselves of the day-to-day management responsibilities and want to diversify a bit. It's kind of a win-win across the board, and a lot of sellers have taken advantage of that with us and our group as of late. Are you seeing any of that out there in your conversations?
Oh, 100%, Matt. And I've seen the returns that your funds have generated over the years. I mean, very, very impressive from a preferred return cash flow standpoint, putting cash into owners' hands on a monthly or quarterly basis. And then your IRRs are pretty extraordinary as well. And one of the primary services that we provide, Skyview Advisors, is called a return on equity analysis. So when we're giving the owner a updated opinion of value, we also provide them with a snapshot of what their return on equity looks like. And it's not uncommon for a multi-decade owner to have return on equity in the low single digits, just because they have so much trapped equity in their property and they haven't necessarily been focusing on operational optimization. The solution that we've been discussing, I mean, that allows them to tap into that trapped equity and in most cases even boost their monthly or quarterly cash flow. And they're also getting the benefit of passive investment with best-in-class operators and diversification. So that really is a very strong solution for any hesitant sellers out there that wasn't as widely proliferated, just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, our group, actually, our CFO recently wrote a white paper on this topic, and we'll actually share it as part of this podcast. And we'd love to share it with you as well and get your thoughts on it at some point. With that, Keith, I'd like to ask, kind of in closing, our goal here is, as you know, to inspire entrepreneurs, those that want to get into business for themselves, or they're going through a tough time and they're not sure they can make it to the other side. People are telling them they can't. Maybe they should take a safe, secure job. One of the things we admire about you is, with your engineering background, have a degree, and you really have a passion and a belief in what you're doing, and said, you know what, that's the safe, secure route. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and pursue what I really believe in this asset class here. How did you make that transition? And perhaps even more importantly, what advice would you give, somebody who's where you were 5 or 10 years ago to really chase their dreams and their passion versus that safe, secure route and job?
Yeah, great question and very important question, especially in today's world where I think young people people have a little bit more of an opportunity to be entrepreneurial. I think the standard track method of your 4-year degrees and working for a corporation for multiple decades and getting a pension plan is just not nearly as common as it was decades ago. So it is very important to keep your eyes open and look for those opportunities that not only inspire you, but provide foreseeable longevity and opportunity going forward. So I would recommend really to anyone, regardless of what your passion is, investment in real estate in particular provides just such a holistic, comprehensive foundation for you that's going to serve you for the rest of your life. So really the important recommendation is to get started. It's a lot easier. You don't have to go out and buy an entire single family rental home necessarily. There are a lot of online platforms where you can buy fractional shares of properties and you get best in class reporting on that. And you can really learn how to dive into a P&L and a trial balance sheet and a rent roll and understand the mechanics of how this business works before you jump into something deeper. And there are tons of investment clubs, especially here in San Diego, that are meeting on a weekly basis that are about fostering that growth and knowledge and referral base to be able to help folks that are trying to expand their knowledge base and the opportunities in this industry. So really getting started, leveraging technology to expedite the learning process are probably my biggest recommendations.
Yeah. And join a support group is what I hear you saying as well. Get around like-minded people that are going to support you and your goals and your passion and your dreams and get out there and do it at the end of the day. Make it happen. It's, I think, something important that's worth saying. I'm part of this investment group and now I keep going back to AI, but it's really remarkable. A lot of very successful people, and it kind of reminds me of your family. A lot of successful people have sent their children to school with this idea that, hey, they're going to be lawyers and they're going to be this high earning knowledge worker. And now, what we see Claude capable of doing and some of these other LLMs, you sit there and you question, not so much myself. I don't have a college degree, so I don't know if I would fit in that bucket, but I see folks and you feel for them because they've worked so hard for this degree. And now at a click of a button, you could get answers instantaneously that would take somebody who has a degree from Harvard weeks to deliver and produce. And this investment group was saying, hey, what are you going to tell your kids to do in the future that's not going to be disintermediated, that's not where you won't be displaced by AI? And I will say this, and this isn't a pitch or a promotion or anything of the sort. I don't think AI could ever replace affordable housing.
Yep.
I can't see it. How does that work? If it did work, I want to learn about it, but I just don't see that happening. So I would tell my children, own hard assets and don't sell them and be the best operator that you possibly can be. And if you do those things, I don't think AI is ever going to displace you. It's never going to hurt you. In fact, you're going to use it and leverage it to help you enhance your margins and become a better investor and a better operator.
100%. And I would just add to that, learn how our tax code works. That's something that comes far too down the line for many people. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And most folks are just concerned about trying to make as much top line revenue as they can. And sometimes it's too late until once you start ramping that up and you see how much is going out the back door. It's incredibly complicated, our tax code, obviously. So can't emphasize enough how much a good trusted CPA or even a good working knowledge of how to leverage AI tools to understand that will serve you well.
100%. And it's also worth noting how much our tax code is stacked to the benefit of being a real estate investor.
Absolutely.
I mean, our tax code was written so you'd go out there and take risks in real estate. I mean, I don't think there's any other financial asset that has the tax advantages and benefits that real estate does. I mean, if you invest in public equities or, you buy private businesses, not that you can't generate better returns, but from a pure tax perspective, I've never seen anything better than owning real estate.
I mean, we literally get a special discount for what's called a real estate professional, and you don't have a software engineering professional carve out in the US tax code. You don't have a HR recruiting specialist carve out. I mean, it really is singled out. So yeah, 100%. And that's, again, the reason to just get in, learn how it works. Even if it's not going to become your primary career, it's going to serve you well and help you achieve financial freedom at some point in your life. So just can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Keith, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been a fun afternoon. We enjoy this conversation. Hope to continue it. Hopefully we could do some deals in the future.
Absolutely. That'd be great, Matt. We'd love to work with you guys. You guys are top notch. So really appreciate what your team's been doing. It's been good to see you guys grow. show. I hope we can continue this connection going forward.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. And the feeling is mutual. And let us know if there's anything we could do to help on your end as well.
Sounds good. Will do, man. You enjoy
All
your
right.
weekend.
Yeah, you too.